All right. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Olufunsho Akinsanya. As I always say, I am member 001 of Rainy Day Cooperative Society, and we are a community where we prioritize collective ambition and the advancement of individual pursuits. Today, in line with our overall theme for the month of March, we are looking at things from the learned perspective. How do I mean? In the previous sessions, we looked at the tax angle, we looked at the land due diligence angle, and today we are looking at things from the legal angle. Legal being the overarching theme of compliance and due diligence. Any compliance you are doing that does not involve the legality of what you are doing has failed in the first place. And it's my pleasure to bring up one of us, Barrister Temitope Adebi. I will be sharing his Babatope Adebi, pardon me. You can check him out on LinkedIn. He's an experienced legal professional and is one of us, so we know him well. We know his sound. He's also a modern lawyer. So he's Igbalode lawyer, as they say. He is in tune with the times and is also conversant with the unchanging principles of the law. In that sense, we are happy to, whenever you're watching this, 1 year from now, 10 years from now, next month, later this evening, and wherever you're watching from, we like you to listen to the things that he has to share. Many of these things come from practical experience because he's someone that I know personally, and I know how much experience he has built over the years. We have invited him to TikTok live sessions before, and he does a great job of sharing pragmatic stuff, not textbook knowledge. So whenever you choose to listen to this video or this recording, do not trivialize the lessons that he will be sharing. And should you ever need his professional advice, I'd be happy that you reach out to him either through the Rainy Day office, who would connect you with him, or you can catch him up on LinkedIn. Babatope Adebi is his name. So without wasting too much of our time, I'll yield the floor over to the learned one, Mr. Babatope Adebi. Thank you very much. Vice Adebi, please, you can proceed with your session. You can unmute yourself also, please. Okay, while our guest speaker is handling his device, I'd like you to also be aware of our projects at Rainy Day, which include the Lagos Housing Program. You can go to our website, you'll find it there. And you're welcome, Mr. Adebi. Please unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry, can you hear me? So, apologies. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. Please.
Okay. All right. Good evening. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Sorry, I had a bit of some network problem. That was why I had a bit of issue joining in the first place. Like I mentioned, it's a pleasure to be here, and it's good to also have this opportunity to give back in terms of one's technical skills to help ourselves, and that's one of the opportunity and leverage that the cooperative society has also given to each and every one of us to interact and exchange ideas that can help us not only personally but our businesses and different other endeavors that we might find ourselves doing. So, like I did it, like the topic actually connotes doing business in a fragile economy from a legal perspective. I would like to, as much as possible, make it elementary in breaking things down. And what do I mean? I know that people are familiar with what a fragile economy is, particularly as a whole lot of us live in one. And unfortunately, people don't know that when you operate in a fragile economy like ours, there are some things that can actually help, particularly from the point of how the law can intervene and assist and help in navigating your business and assist your economy, your business in navigating through the challenges and to be more resilient, as we always call it. So when we talk about a fragile economy, it's not only oftentimes it's from a point of business owners, entrepreneurs, and all of that having headaches as to how they want to stay afloat. But what people also don't know is the fact that for lawyers practicing in this same economy, it's always a tough time for us, because when the economy is fragile, it also leads to certain intended and unintended consequences, which even way beyond if care is not taken. Your law might not be able to assist in providing necessary legal solution at that point in time. For us, a fragile economy is also a legal risk environment. It drives up legal risk. And one of the things that you would always see is that the fragile economy is susceptible to macroeconomics. In fact, that's the simple language one can use. Macroeconomics in terms of inflation, in terms of exchange rate, volatility, in terms of supply chain disruption, in terms of geopolitical tension, cost of finance, and all of that, CPR, a whole lot of things affect that kind of economy. And typically, we don't need to go far. Nigeria is one very fragile economy, and it's staring us in the face. Of recent is what we've seen happen, US-Israel versus Iran, and we can all see the effect, particularly in the cost of energy. And once that happens, you see the ripple effects. Prices of transportation have gone up, obviously. We've also seen cost of goods reflecting that spike or recent changes in cost of energy. So before you know it, a whole lot of things will suffer. One of the things is, for example, businesses will also start to struggle, because what will happen is you then see people having to increase price, and disposable income will start shrinking. And before you know it, the economy would, and again, if you look at it, the trajectory of what we have as an economy in the last 2-3 years, you will know that we are just starting to get out from, if I can use the word quote unquote, economic doldrum. And with what is happening now, a whole lot of assumptions for the year 2026 might likely be revised sharply, because with what we are seeing now, you might see a lot of business struggling. So what I want to discuss this evening is more or less saying that oftentimes than not, you see that businesses, both big, medium, and small businesses, they are well prepared for sales, pricing, and cash flow. But what you realize, especially for small and medium scale businesses, is the fact that they don't prepare for uncertainties that we have at the moment. Maybe a lot of them have now, obviously, after the Buhari era and what came with it. But largely, you discover that a whole lot of business are not prepared for the legal uncertainty, or let me say economic uncertainty, which comes with a whole lot of legal related issues. So, and that's why this evening, just some few points on how the law can always come to rescue you, or the law can always help you to stay afloat. The law can always help your business to stay adaptable and resilient when we have an economy, quote unquote, igiaga like that of our country. So it's important to just look at, and again, some of these things are low-hanging efforts that you can actually put in place to assist your business. But oftentimes, a typical Nigerian or a typical Nigerian entrepreneur would always act reactively, would not possibly look at what's going to happen in the future. And that's why you struggle hard to see a Nigerian business that has been in operation for 40, 50, 60 years, because we are always going to act in a reactive manner. And the businesses we also set up are wired same way. And so back to what we are saying, just to give some information that could help as per how the law could intervene, would assist and help you to stay afloat in critical times like this. So as much as possible, first is in terms of the structure of the business. It's important to have a good structure. We can begin to talk about having a structure that has legal footing. Between you and I, it's no longer fashionable to keep saying you have a business name, because at the end of the day, there's really, yes, it might offer you some protection, but as of now, if you look at the incentive and some of the things you stand to gain, it's better you have a structure that is well defined. And for the sake of corporate governance, it's good that you have a company that is well set up. And like we always say, a company will always have a corporate legal personality. Is a person different from those behind it, the founders and all of that. But most importantly, it outlasts everybody. It outlasts everybody. It can be there 100 years, 200 years, it's still there. So that's one thing that you also need to have. In an economy like we have in Nigeria, ensure that your company is well structured, properly structured, duly registered, and the ownership is well defined, the governance is well defined, the powers, the signatories, and internal control, internal governance is well defined. That's one way. And again, one of the things why all of these things are necessary is because if for any reason whatsoever you want to ask for credit line, you want to put a credit line with the bank, or you want to capitalize your business, you want to raise funds and all of that, one of the critical things they will look at is your structure. How bankable is this particular business? And in fact, when there's need for credit rating of your company, one of the things they will look at is how solid your corporate governance is, how solid is the administration and the management structure of the business. That is what sometimes gives those who are going to rate you and your prospective creditor, that's what gives them the comfort to advance that loan and provide capital. And that's why you see some companies, they can easily walk into the capital market, get money ASAP, whether by commercial paper or whether by IPO and all of those things, they will get money because everybody sees the structure there. And that's why such a business would find it hard to struggle when uncertainty happens and all of that. So in terms of structure, ensure that you register properly, Separate business from personal finance. Don't muddle up your fund. Fund going to company should go to company. Fund going to business should go to business. And keep all your records. Keep all your record. If it's going to be a partnership, it's going to be a relationship where two or more people are coming together, have a well-defined shareholder agreement that defines how things are done, or have a partnership agreement or partnership deed in between those who are coming together to form that entity. It's very, very important, because oftentimes too, when the company becomes bigger or it goes it gets blown, like we usually call it, there's significant growth, and some of these issues are not treated. You discover that oftentimes are not. This always will lead to the root cause of disintegration and breakup and all of that. We've seen instances where shareholders go at each other or one another because of failure to have a well-defined structure as per ownership and as per stake in the company. So it's very important to have all of this, and pressure that comes with times like this always go to the root of the existence of companies, because we are talking of a situation where in revenue is not flowing, company is struggling, cost of doing business is high. At that point in time, people might start reconsidering doing or staying in business, and that's why these governance documents that define structure are very important to have in place. Informality sometimes can be very expensive. Forget the fact that, oh, you started business as hustle. Leave as soon as you discover that your business is scaling, leave that hustling part of it, make it formal, define it very well, so that your business can withstand the test of time. I don't know if they can still hear me, or you can still hear me. Sorry, am I making sense? I want to be sure.
Yes.
Okay. So I would move to the second point, how the law can help you to remain resilient in trying times, economic trying times like this, is to have your agreement, your documentation, your agreement, your contract defined in such a way that it does not also look like it foresees normal economy. Your agreement should also foresee trying times. It should also foresee an abnormal market. And if you deal with a lawyer who knows his onion, or you have a legal advisor somewhere, one of the things you must do as a lawyer is to be a risk manager. And one of the things we do, or one of the biggest thing you can do for your client, is to have a thinking cap that foresees what could go wrong. And in Nigeria of today, you can't have an agreement that definitely does not foresee price escalation. For example, you can't have a fixed contract for a long period of time that does not foresee fluctuation of prices. Particularly, for example, the subject matter of the goods or the service you are providing is FX denominated. So it's very important for you as a person to ensure that your contract is awarded in such a way that they can think ahead and can reflect the abnormality of your economy. For instance, I used to be in the real estate sector, and at those times, nobody usually talks about FX escalation and all of those things. You just have all this off-plan that speaks to this is how you pay at these certain times and all of that. 48 months that you offer people and you go to bed. But the lessons are there. You can't have a 48-month duration of an agreement when you know that you are buying building materials, you are importing them from outside the country. You are exposing yourself to what they call it, MPR, that fluctuates like anything. You understand? So all of these things you expect to reflect when you are couching that contract, because what it does is that if you don't then factor in the principle of the law, is parties are bound by what they agreed to, whether or not it's nonsensical, in as much as there is no force or you were not coerced to sign off. Anything you sign off, you sign it off. So It's very critical that your agreement would look at all these, if I can use the word, macroeconomics vagaries, and really encapsulate them and edge them and create buffers for them in the agreement, so that at the point in time when there is problem or there is fluctuation or there is trouble like currently are, you can always go back to those review mechanisms that you have put in place. So that helps you to be able to navigate and escape all those landmines that comes to trading in a volatile economy like Nigeria. This won't be the case, for example, in places in the Western world where you have, let's imagine, FX is single digits, bank interest rate is single digits. But in Nigeria, trust me, it can move at a rate that you don't even imagine. Even when the rate that you are even seeing, the bank interest rate or the inflation rate that you are seeing, you know that it's quote unquote padded. So you have to be careful when you know how those things can significantly impact on your business. You need to really use how you can couch your agreement to deal with those things ahead of time. COVID is also an example of what has made sure that we have what we call force majeure in your contract. Anything can happen that is beyond your control. And the rule around force majeure is that it must be specifically stated. Not only specifically stated, the nature must also be stated. So when you have these things, when the time comes or when this unintended event happen, you can really revert to clauses in your agreement that can help you. There are hardship clauses, call it hardship clauses. These are clauses that, again, defeats the, so when you have happenings that defeats the entire intendment of parties at the point of signing, hardship clause can help you to say, you know what, let us renegotiate and do what is necessary so that both of us can be in good shape. Again, your document, your contract, like we always call it, is not just paper. The contract, as much as possible, is for you to be able to allocate your risk and to be prepared in case of any eventuality. So that is very critical. Another thing to look at is the place of compliance. There's no place you can be doing business. You can't be doing business in a fragile economy like Nigeria and you will not pay attention to compliance. Again, and I'll be quick to raise up my hands and say, yes, compliance has its own cost, but at the same time, it helps you to navigate or deal with so many problems that you can never imagine. If you are used to the one that you have a way of manipulating your taxes, your pension, your payroll, and all of that, it's always a big problem. It can create trouble for you. And when it happens, you must be prepared to pay the backlog. So as much as possible, one of the things that can help you to stay afloat in a fragile economy like Nigeria is by ensuring that you have proper record keeping, proper filing obligation. All the books that you are supposed to have, you have it. You track your expenses, you track your remittance, you have good relationship with your regulators, you have your technical consultants, you have them ready helping you to navigate, move a whole lot of things. Trust me, and I can tell you, compliance is the biggest license to operate that you can have. Compliance, again, like I mentioned, is the biggest license to operate that you can have, whether as a small business, whether as a medium or big corporate out there. Compliance, in fact, that's one of the things that keeps you or makes you to stay afloat. It's one beautiful that you must learn to have, and that's a secrecy. That's one of the secrets for longevity in business. If you go and see all these businesses that have stayed in business for 50, 60, 70, they don't stay in business because they are cooking the books. They stay in business because they do things according to the law. And when a bit of the economy is taking shape, or maybe there is policy inconsistency, they still remain afloat because they are doing what they are expected to do. Again, compliance is not just administrative housekeeping. It's a way of you ensuring is one of the key pillars of your enterprise risk management. It's one of the pillars that you cannot avoid not to meet at every point in time. It's very, very essential. All the things that you need to do, and this is my mindset, if you can't treat compliance with seriousness as a small business, it is not when you scale or when you become bigger that compliance will now be one of the key flagship of your business practices. So the smaller you are, ensure that, again, compliance is a big deal for you. And like I said, I understand how expensive it can be, but you still need to do what you have to do. Another thing to note, observe with fragile economy is that you need to do price adjustment. You need to do price adjustment for your service, for your goods, and all of that. And oftentimes are not. That's also when you have a regulator like FCCPC that deals with cost of consumer protection and competition law. That's when you also see them very active. At least you've heard of what recently happened last week, where they said they are going to sanction some airlines that engage in price gouging. Price gouging for by way of simple explanation is when you increase price unreasonably. There's no parameter, there's no basis, there's no lawful justification, there's no sound economic justification for the price increase. So you must ensure that as a business, when there's troubling times like we currently have, or when you have a fragile economy in Nigeria, the price adjustment must have clear basis. There must be underpinning indicators as to why you are increasing price. You can't just exaggerate and say, although because this is what it is. Yeah, no. If you do that, you might be liable for price gouging. The regulators might come after you. And another thing is the fact that, again, you see people, this is when you see people talk about no refund. It's important for you as a business to be careful because the FCCPA, which is the Federal Consumer Protection and Federal Competition Law and Consumer Protection Act, is very explicit. It's unlawful to say that goods are non-refundable. A person should be entitled to a refund. However, there are obviously reasonable exceptions. If, for example, we are talking of perishable goods, or you were complicit, or you mutilated the goods and all of that. But this is very common, especially in those who do their business digitally via social media, who always put no refund. It's totally illegal. The law is clear that a user of goods or services should be able to have refund if there's reason or there's reasonable belief that you've not been able to do what you're expected to do, or you've misrepresented yourself in selling those goods or service to that person. So when things are tight like this, everybody wants money at all costs. So you see people say, oh, we don't do refund, though I've sold it to you, and all of that. But as a business, you have to be mindful of those things. Again, data protection is also very important. These are things that usually, or prior to now, nobody really cares about how data is being used. And even now, churches, banks, and everybody is prioritizing data protection and data privacy, because there are legislation around it. There are now legislative safeguards as to how you handle these things. So as you do your business, in a bid to say you want customers, or you want this from your customers and all of that, you may start treating data in an unwholesome manner. And trust me, if you are not careful, you might run into problems. So you have to ensure that your data is limited to the use that you are collecting it for. And also let your customers know that you are collecting their data for this purpose. Let them give their consent. If they want you to remove their names from, especially those who operate at the digital level, digital economy, those who are digital entrepreneurs, you are selling goods and services via the cyberspace. You have to be careful how information flies and all of those things. So if you are using a third-party person to sell your goods and services, it's also important that all the necessary safeguards are in place to ensure that data information and trade secret of people are well and properly managed. Again, don't mislead your customers because people want money now. If your goods or your service can give people A, describe it as A. If you do anything that can be misrepresented or becomes fraudulent misrepresentation, you'll be liable. There is a sheriff FCCPC, like I mentioned, that is ready to go after you. I always cite the example of Coca-Cola last year when they ran into problem with zero sugar, zero Coke, zero sugar and their normal Coke when they were fined, I think 160 million naira for failure to distinguish or failure for them to really distinguish between zero Coke and the normal Coke. So if you also do that and you are found wanted, people can take you before the FCCPC and can run into problem. So again, I'll wrap up on this point by saying that data governance are not just simple issue. You don't gloss over them. They are very serious. There's no need for you to collect people's number, please leave their number because that's the hinting now. You want to give people promo and all of that. If they say they don't want, allow them to have their say. Another thing that happens is business trying to shed weight. You see plenty of reorganization. You see people talk about redundancy at this point. You see people talk about, in fact, a lot of people find a way of chasing away their employee if they are, particularly if things are not taking shape again. Some will just say, please, you know what, by text, send your workers away by text. Please, I don't want to see your face again. Again, employment is very, very, very sacrosanct. And I always tell people, and I have people on this call who can also be employed. Employment is a big deal. The landscape of employment, where somebody will just wake up on the side of the bed and come to work and say he doesn't want to see somebody's face again. I don't like your face. Get out of my face. It's no longer fashionable because the law is very now well defined and is a robust landscape that will deal decisively if you decide to be an errant or high-handed employer. So it's very important when things are going bad for your business, for your company, rather than just sit and say, oh, you are sacking people. Before you render somebody redundant, there are procedure and process to it under the Labor Act. Before you sack somebody, for example, there must be a reason. Judgment of court will tell you that you must provide reason for sacking an employee. For you to render somebody redundant, there must be engagement with that person before you say, oh, we are laying you off, we are sacking you, and we want to let you go. So as much as possible, you can also just wake up and say, oh, you know what? I'm cutting off your salary by 30% because this and that. If your contract of employment does not foreseeably define all those things with your employee, you can't unilaterally wake up and communicate reduction in their salary. You can't just change people's role. You can't just start terminating. It must be process driven and it must be in accordance with the law. You need to sit down with a labor law and industrial relation expert to guide you on how best to proceed. And always remember, employment is not one-sided. Employment is mutual. It's an agreement. Come and work for me. I will give you value for my time and for which the other person is paying. So it's not you doing anybody any favor. That's where a whole lot of business entrepreneurs, they will say when they employ people, you are not picking anybody off the street. This one is I'm sorry to sound like an employee lawyer, but we need to say it. This person is giving you time value and money and time value and energy. So you have to understand that if you need to let that person go, you need to discuss. There needs to be meeting of minds. Just when you hired him, you discussed and you agreed. When you also want to let him go, except if you are letting that person go on the basis of misconduct and all of that. But if you want to let somebody go, there must always be reason to sit down and say, okay, this is what it is. Or if you want to lay off, if you want to cut salary, sit them down and say, this is what it is. If you can't, can you accept if we allow you go and all of that? So as much as possible, avoid being impulsive. Avoid being impulsive at those times. Ensure that your decisions are not arbitrarily made. And don't ignore dignity of persons. There's something that is common now. There's something that is common, especially when it comes to labor law landscape, unfair labor practice. Trust me, that unfair labor practice is like an umbrella that captures so many excesses of employers. So avoid anything that would tantamount to unfair labor practice. You want anybody to go, let them go in peace. Let them go in a manner that is sensible. Communicate it in a manner that is sensitive. And like I always say, there's a way you can always say something bad, and the person who is the recipient of that message will feel good about it. There's a way you can always communicate it. There's a way you can lay somebody off that the person would see reason as to why they're laying. Yeah, it might be painful, but at the same time, it is not acrimonious. That's what I'm trying to say. Because at the end of the day, that money that you don't want to pay, when the matter eventually escalates to litigation, it goes to National Industrial Court, for example, you will pay way beyond what you would have paid that person. And unfortunately, employer matter, you can't take it to police station. If any police does that, obviously, they'll find themselves in suit. Because that's also one convenient way things would say. You now start bringing up trump up charges against the employee. I think those are not smart ways of doing things, because at the end of the day, that person will go to court for damages and all of those things. So again, we understand your business may be distressed because of the fragility of the economy, but at the same time, it has its own responsibility to treat its people well. So another thing to also look at is that there are ways businesses can grow. There are ways businesses can also identify the signal. Businesses can restructure themselves. It's not a crime. One of the ways you can even restructure a business is to close down the business. You are restructuring. If you feel that the current structure can no longer accommodate what you do, or cannot stand the test of time, or is no longer sustainable, you change model. So the law gives room for so many opportunities. That's why you have mergers. That's why you have acquisitions. Those are things that the law would help you. If you feel that you are struggling and there is a bigger company, case in point, Diamond Bank. You and I know that the biggest bank by assets, from what I know, is Access today. And I make bold to say that one of the special or assets that Access has today is their IT infrastructure. And from what I know, most of these things came from Diamond Bank that has a solid IT infrastructure. So it is not bad when you look at the future and it's not looking good. Like we always say, you can integrate from within and you can integrate from without. You can restructure from within or restructure from outside. So if you see that, oh, this business does not actually have a future, or you have looked, you do your SWOT analysis and you feel we can no longer stay in this game as a struggling business, as a distressed business, you can opt out for a merger with a bigger company, or you can allow yourself to be acquired while you get a bigger stake in the bigger company. So don't hide it. Don't ever hide it. You can bring in people to also, you can bring investors, you can bring people to finance you. You can also renegotiate your exposure And that's one thing that you should also add. Like I mentioned, the law is there for you. When you have your credit lines or when you are signing off that loan agreement, you should be able to talk about renegotiation of loans when the fundamentals change. So maybe when inflation has moved from this to this, you should be able to, those are the things you expect to have. So those are the things that can help you stay afloat. When you're able to have things that can help you refinance yourself, renegotiate your exposure, and all of that. Or another thing is formal business rescue. In order to salvage, liquidators can come in and all of that can surely happen while your business can still stay afloat. So as much as possible, when you know that the chips are down, distress should not be hidden. Distress should not be hidden. You should not wait for when insolvency proceeding will come or people will start going to court for the company to be compulsorily wound up. Identify it from afar. Rescue your business if need arises. Rescue it. Business rescue and a business failure, the difference is just timing. One is being proactive and the other is failure to be proactive. So it's like I mentioned, it's not a problem when your business struggles. It's just for you to be able to take early actions that would help you that will give you legal room to maneuver and to stay afloat. So again, at this point in time, I want to wrap everything up, bring it home, because I've timed myself that this is not going to last beyond 6:45, so that there can be room for question and answer if possible. Is that, again, the difference between businesses that die or go under when things are tough and the business that stay afloat is just being able to do the needful. And like I mentioned, the law is always ready to help you. The law is always ready to help you. And that's why, as much as possible, all those big business moguls that you see out there, they always have one friend who is their lawyer, who is always at their beck and call to guide them. Trust me, what we are currently having as a country now, I know some companies have their lawyers on speed dial, trying to know how you can walk through those landmines already staring them in their faces. So, as much as possible, document early, negotiate early, comply early, restructure early. Don't wait until you have a dispute arising. Don't wait on when you are audited or there's enforcement or cash crisis before you start putting things in order or in accordance to the law. Let me put it out there straight up. The law will not remove your risk. The game is the game. The game will always be the game. But what the law can help you to do, it can be that Google map that will tell you that this route has obstacle, that this route can take you to where you are going faster. You understand? The law is always ready to help you to avoid fatal exposure that can bring an end to your business. I think with this viewpoint of mine, I've been able to convince and not confuse you that the law can actually be an instrument of assistance in a fragile economy like Nigeria. For now, I will yield my mic for questions and answer. And I hope you've gained 1 or 2 or 3 things from all I've been saying for the past 40-something minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. I like the simplicity with which you have approached this topic, because compliance, especially from an overarching standpoint that is legal, is very broad, and you have done quite a 15/10 job trying to piece these points apart and let people see that it applies across all aspects. One thing I like to I've dropped a question now because you use that terminology, and I know that some people do not understand what it means. I dropped it in the chat box. Even you mentioned something about Access Bank. Most people do not know that Ababigwe and Gimokwe, they are not the founders of Access Bank.
Yes.
They
Yes.
bought it from the persons who owned it when the institution became a struggling institution, and then they put energy into it. So at all, nine bad pass, as they say on the streets. They've gone on to buy several other companies across Africa, and those ones have also taken their liquidity off the table and moved on with their life, including Coronation Group. So
Yes.
Coronation Group is, I still sent it to someone this afternoon, is Associate Discount House, it's Wapik Insurance, and several other businesses that they've put together to become that conglomerate, that capital market owning company that is called Coronation today. In terms of compliance, like he also mentioned, I will tell you guys a backstory. One day I was going through, myself and Dr. Omulaki, we were driving through Gomosho. We had gone to see our farm. We were trying to make some for due diligence and stuff. And they kept talking about former governors and senators who would use their veto power to just take over land. And because there was no due diligence to tie up the land when it was being acquired, the very minute they're out of office, or if they're still a bit powerful outside office, once they die, the owners of the land will come back and ask for their land, because the court will now ask, okay, if you say you bought the land, what did you buy the land with? Did you file the transaction? What was the evidence of payment and all those things? So there are many businesses that cannot be passed on to the next generation because the underlying legal framework is illegal. Let me put it, hope it's not tautology. So we're talking about different big shots. I mean, I won't be able to mention anybody's name who have just color B, let's put it that way, people's lands in thousands of acres and all whatnot. And then issues happen, former politicians, big lawyers. The spectrum of impunity is not even escaping some people who are supposedly lawyers. But when the person dies like this, you will remember that you will find out that the people that own the land, they will come out and they say, hey, your father did not pay us. So we only kept quiet, hoping that he will do right by us because he's one of us. Now that he has died, we know that he cannot do right by us again. We want our property back. And you see it even in government acquisitions. I know my Barrister Batokwe has addressed this before, where government takes land from people for public interest purposes and government does not use it for the same. I think that Magodo is an example.
Yeah.
I will let the learned gentleman speak to it. So at every point in time, let's ensure if there is a business that you know that the compliance, so this is how I always advise people. I mean, and this is a business conversation. If there's a business opportunity or investment opportunity that the compliance cost is greater than your reward, it's okay to abandon that business and walk away. Not the fact, oh, I can hustle for it. I don't need to comply. Would they run? I'm under G. Nigerians always feel like they are the smartest, forgetting that the person on the other side has data and information to also track. For example, one of our lawyers, we're trying to do a business in 2022, and she sent me a military rule. That decree has been since the military, that business is if you do it beyond a certain threshold, it is illegal. And it's only banks.
I remember.
Yeah. So it's only banks that can do that business, and even then, you do it with both eyes open. So once I saw that the cost of compliance does not make sense, I just washed my hands away. That I will not do this business at a small level where I would eventually get into trouble until I can afford to do it at the level where the compliance cost can just be a rounding error. will I come back into this business? Is the business profitable? Very profitable. But over time, I've seen people fall into trouble in that business. And even I had my own share of experience. So I just washed my hands off of it and went to go and look for something else to do with my time. So the floor is open for questions, and I'm sure our Oga, please check the chat. You can read the question I asked, and whilst others come up with their questions, I just like you to explain it to us in layman terms so that people understand when they see it in contracts.
Yes. So force majeure is a principle that deals with so we call it act of God. When something happens without the intervention or based on factors that are out of, so it's not that one party did it or the other party did it. It just happened out of sheer circumstance. So, for example, COVID-19 was an example. When COVID happened, it was not your fault, it was not my fault. But it was a pandemic that broke out. And at that point, everybody had to just adjust to it. So that's one. So it's a circumstance that is beyond the reasonable control of parties. So that's sorry, I don't know if you are with me, if you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so circumstance that is beyond the control of parties to a contract. That's basically what force majeure events are. And the principle is that for it to apply to your contractual obligations, it must be specifically called out. So you must specifically state it as part of your contract, and you must call out those events. So you must call them out: pandemic, epidemic, act of God, fire, labor action, cyber attacks, all of those things. List them out. You cannot obviously emphasize everything, but again, list them out as much as possible explicitly. So such that, and what comes when force majeure happens, what it does is that parties can no longer carry out their obligation or responsibility as emphasized under the contract. And what that means is there will be a pause. There will be a pause for them. So that's a pause, and nobody can go ahead and do what they're expected to do. So there's a pause. The contract is now held in abeyance, like we always call it, pending when normality returns. So that's basically what force majeure is. I don't know if that is explicit and clear enough with that explanation. Okay. And any other question? And just to add to what Mr. Funshaw said, when you play by the books, to be honest, it saves you a whole lot of headache, especially in a country called Nigeria. Again, like I said, it's tough, but the foundation of your license to operate, the foundation of your existence as a corporate person is just compliance. First is compliance. And always know that every compliance principle, every compliance framework built up is from a risk. Is always to mitigate certain risk. So those who came up with those compliance framework, they knew what they saw. They knew the implication of what they saw before they came up with that framework. So it's to help you do things better. That's the essence of compliance. Well, Nigeria, the mindset is quite different, because sometimes compliance in Nigeria is about just making money, revenue generation. But the real sense of it is to help you do things better for not only your for the sustenance of your business, as well as all other things that are attached to it. And like I mentioned, that's why a company that is known or has reputation for compliance would get fantastic rating, would get access to funds than a company that doesn't pay attention to all of those things. Any other question?
Thank you very much, Chief. Please, questions. Should I be mentioning people's name? I know certain people who have reached out to me in the past. They've asked me legally oriented questions, I think that this is a good time for them to speak up, because to be clear, this is the only free session that Barrister Babatokwe is obliged to give us. I have heard of situations where, and we are discouraging it, if you cannot ask the question here and they answer you, please do not go back to them in private and expect that they will consult you for free. Even if you are the one that sent them to school, there should be a boundary. Yeah, so please, if you have your questions, ask them now. If you go and meet them in private, as a Rainy Day member, they will give you concession, but it does not mean that it will be free. If you are not a Rainy Day member, well, you will pay your money in full. But any question that you don't ask now, or maybe send it to me privately if you have my number. If you don't want to talk, or if it's a coded issue, text me now if you have my number, and I would go ahead and share it. Otherwise, you will be asking for professional consulting after this conversation. Dr. Emmanuel, are you there? Do you have any question? Miss Kikun Alo? Yes. I want to be sure that I'm reading right now. Mr. Olamide. Okay,
No
Doctor, do you have any
questions.
questions?
No questions. It was a very interesting, educating, and enlightening session. Thank you very much, Rainy Day. Thank you, Barrister Babatokwe Adibi. Thank you, everyone.
Right. Mr. William Ojibeli, do you have any question?
Yeah, thank you. I'm fine. Thank you for the lecture. I'm good.
All right. So he made a comment. Will vessels be deemed to be operating a business? I'm not sure how you mean by deemed to be operating a business. I'm not quite sure how you mean by that, Ms. Kikwalo.
You need to, Mr. Fonshaw, you need to circulate your FAQ.
We have circulated it. I mean, it's on the website, so I'm surprised that she's not new to us, so I'm trying to understand where the question, what angle the question is coming from. If you can drop the question on the Rainy Day WhatsApp group so that I'm trying to make it as explicit as possible, then I think that's better. So we can, if I need to respond like this.
In simple terms, when you invest, you get dividend.
Exactly.
You are not doing business. You are invested. So what you get is just dividend.
Of course.
Which is limited to your stake in the business.
In the business. That's why we have the cooperative itself is limited by nature. So also is the SPV that was performed for the farm is limited by nature. So you are participating in the business. Exactly. But if you have more explicit questions, please ask on the registered members group, which is only for members, which you are a member. So I'd like to speak to something that you said the other time, and it's for people that play in the crypto space. There were certain things in 2020. Hello? Miss Falo, are you there?
Yes, no, thank you. Sorry, just about the farm. My question was more, is there a point, a threshold at which the corporate veil is pierced and the subscribers are deemed to be employing people and actually operating the business?
Employing who? I'm not sure if I get you.
Like employing the workers on the farm, and is there a point where an ownership right can actually be viewed more as an ownership of the business rather than just pure passive investment?
Yeah, so the way we have designed it is such that if you like to be more active, speak to us at the leadership level, and then we'll make room for you to be active. We would find out your skill sets and stuff, because again, you need to. One person does not know everything. Even if you're an owner in the business, and the lawyers will speak to this, there is division of labor. There is the management cadre. You are good at management. Why are you good at management? So what would be your contribution to that active ownership, such that when you want to become active, we will welcome you, and then it does not disrupt the operations of the farm. I hope that answers your question.
Yes. No, my question was, it was more, so I'm in the UK, so under the laws of the UK, there are certain circumstances where the shareholders' liability is not limited to the value of their investment if it's deemed to be a more active sort of management position in the company. But I think you've answered my question in that you would have to actively opt in for that more active participation.
Exactly.
Okay.
The barrister may also like to speak to that, because being a shareholder of a business or an investor in a business does not automatically expose you to the decisions that the day-to-day managers or the operators of the business take, except you are an operator of the business yourself. But I'm not the legal expert here. I will leave him to shed more light on that.
Okay, I think you said it very well. First of all, an investor is just like a shareholder of a company. You put in your fund and you get dividends, you get your ROI, and as it were, for a company, as a shareholder, you are not those who manage the affairs of the business on a daily basis are there. That's their headache. It's just for you to put in your money and you get. So the same thing applies here. However, I understand, and again, the way the law operates, a business is treated differently from the shareholders. That's why it's corporate legal personality. A business is seen as a person different from shareholders. But like you also mentioned, the law recognizes instances where the law will see those who are shareholders as the company, to call it removing the veil of incorporation, which is more or less if you do certain things where it becomes increasingly difficult to differentiate whether you are the company or you are the share. You've acted in such a way that that distinction cannot be separated or cannot be identified. Obviously, you can bear responsibility, and that's what we call removing the veil of incorporation, where the law will now open, just like you open a curtain, and will say who are the brains behind, who are the ones running these affairs, and who can then be held liable. So if, for example, as a shareholder, you then become heavily invested in day-to-day affair and all of that, and you do some things that are binding and implicate the company, then they can be that. Then the rest or the exposure of the business can be attributed to you directly as a shareholder, particularly if that line can then not be blurred, whether you're a shareholder or you are the manager of the business. But in terms of the way it runs in the classic form, shareholders, investors, they are separate from the business. Except, and again, in all of this, it is the fact that determines the liability. It's the fact, it's how things are run factually that determines whether you'll be seen as this or that. But if it's just for you to put in your money and it works for you and you get your ROI without more, then obviously you won't be held liable for the acts of the company. I don't know if that clarifies.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening. I want to quickly, I know we want to wrap up very quickly. We have a couple of meetings as well. But I just want to quickly say that thank you very much first for your presentation. You mentioned some things on labor laws, and I would like to maybe we'll invite you for another session, maybe in Labor Month in May or something. But I just want to ask, yes, because you are a fire lawyer in that regard. Well, you're a fire lawyer and commercial lawyer, so but in that regard, we have experience with you. So I just want to ask, what's your general advice to people when they're employing so that they don't feel like they've employed people and they are sort of stuck with them. I don't want to break the law. I don't know if this guy will sue me or this person will. What's the ABC basically? Of course, there are more things, but what's the ABC for people who want to employ in Nigeria?
Okay, so it's definitely, as much as possible, the era of using mouth to recruit people is far gone. As much as possible, you don't need to get it all figured out, but the basics, even the Labor Act will tell you that you should get some basic defined, spelled out. So when you are recruiting somebody, have it well formalized, write it down. And again, you don't have to get everything all figured out at the point of, at the exception of the employment relationship. The basics, the leave, the remuneration, the determination, for example, how things, the standard of behavior, all of this thing needs to be spelled out. And if for any reason you want to go ahead and if you want to terminate, always ensure that you put everything. So sorry, when you want to terminate, your termination should be 100% in line with what you have defined. That's very important. Then also you need to be guided. You need to be guided by law, because there are some terms that you put in the agreement that a court like the industrial court has told you they are no longer fashionable. The court will tell you that you can't fire anybody without giving reason. That's the current reality. So you need to be very aware of all of those things. But again, contract of employment is very sacrosanct. If you don't get it right, trust me, that will be the beginning of the problem. And like I always say, the habitat out there, the NIFCN, is an employee court. So when they go there, trust me, I feel strongly that they have a good chance of getting justice against you. So as an employer, I ensure that you have, just get a lawyer to give you a small template, 2-3 pages. Then from there,
I'm about to give you a template.
exactly, you can go further and then do your employee handbook, which can be the Bible and all of that. But ensure that your contract of employment is well defined and watertight. That's what I was saying.
So I was going to say something about crypto, and you said something the other time that most times in compliance, the laws are a function of what people have done in the past. And in 2020, 2021, there were a lot of crypto movements happening, and everybody was just feeling gung-ho and everything, until people started having a lot of premium tiers. Then they realized why banking rules applied in the first place. So I would encourage anybody who is listening to this call at any point in the future, do not think that the world started in your own generation. The many compliance laws that exist, don't do this, don't do that, provide evidence, have certain minimum amount of capital before you start this business, is because certain things have happened in the past, like the bank collapses, even in Nigeria. You have rules like the Sarbanes-Oxley and Stigall Act and all those rules that came because of the bad behavior of certain actors, and knowing that human beings, once something has happened before, it will happen again. Those laws were put in place. So compliance should be seen from a proactive point of view, that you are protecting yourself. It's not just that you are doing it to protect, you are doing it to fulfill all righteousness. There will be times when you will not be you would be at the receiving end of that regulation, and you would have protected yourself. Look at the amount of crypto thefts that happen on a daily basis. It is hard for a bank that is licensed, that you know their office, to steal your money and you don't have anybody to report to. But it's interesting that even some of the crypto businesses are beginning to close down high-risk businesses that put them in a lot of trouble. I'm seeing some businesses say they don't want to power, some crypto exchanges say they don't want to power e-commerce anymore. Why? is back to a simple law, chargebacks, simple problem. Chargebacks that the banks have figured out many years ago is what the crypto guys are just figuring out and realizing that it's an unnecessary step for them. So as you venture into new things, I would always recommend that you speak to a lawyer who is vast in that area. Even if the lawyer doesn't know too much, just get the regulation of that industry, give it to a lawyer, let them go and study it. And then they can point you out to pitfalls that exist in that industry. For I remember that even crypto people came up with something called a DAO, which is, for all intents and purposes, digital version of a cooperative. Again, you need to have an understanding why government regulates cooperatives to realize what are the risks with a DAO, DAO. If you're a crypto person, you will understand it. So those are my own key comments at this time, and I will leave us to stew on it and ask the barrister more questions.
Yes, just to go back to what you said, I think it's a mindset thing, and it's also a cultural thing for us as Nigerians. Compliance is seen from the point of box ticking. Straight up, that's what I've seen. Oh, but if you are proactive enough, you always, and that's one to give it to the Westerner. They will look at it again. The Bible will tell you that, oh, who amongst you want to be the house without counting the cost and all? No, Nigerians don't count the cost. As the Lord liveth, or as the Lord leadeth. And so that's the way I see compliance. Compliance is just that safeguard that you need. See it, look at it. Where do I foresee this business to be in the next? How do I grow it? How do I scale it? Then already create that buffer for it. And that's what compliance does. You create a framework that allows you to be protected. You know that these are the landmines. Then you already figure out what to do to those landmines. That's simply the culture of compliance. And that's why you see some big business, before they go ahead, every year they will tell you, this is my top 10 risk. They will put mitigating action and remediation action. They are foreseeing the future. Trust me, all these geopolitical tension that we have seen, some businesses have seen it all the way. In fact,
Yes.
as Trump was coming into the office, some business know that is a problem. You already know it. So some business have even planned their strategy on the basis of the assumption. If Trump is mad, if Trump does not turns out to be mad, you understand? And they've built their business model on the basis of that. So as what we are seeing now is kicking in, they are already calibrating on the basis of the assumptions that they have on ground. That's the reality. So, and again, those are part of compliance too. You've identified your risk. What are the risks that you have? Geopolitical, you've already addressed it. So it saves your business a whole lot. And again, like I always mention, that's the difference between a business that is resilient and the one that dies at every bump that comes its way. And that's why I will always say it. You can hardly have any Nigerian business that is 50 or 60-year-old. And that's why maybe we're appreciating the likes of Bua, the likes of Dangote that are now coming. And what is even helping those businesses, because they are becoming listed. And there's a whole lot of governance and compliance this thing for listed companies. We all know one telecoms company that is not listed, and we know what is happening there. You understand what I'm saying? And some of us are praying that that big man does not die today, because we know what will happen to that company. You understand? So compliance is a big deal. It's the heart and soul of any business. You just have to put it in place. And in anything you do, it's very, 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 very important and sacrosanct. Thank you.
All right. Do we have any other questions? Ms. Allo, do you have any question before we wrap up the session for this evening?
Nothing further, thanks.
All
Right. I think it's been a pleasure having you here. So next, I think we are going to be focused on career and productivity next month. So our beloved barrister will be back next month to talk about the labor angle to the law.
No problem.
We deeply appreciate you
Thank
for
you.
speaking today, and we will continue to share this with all our friends. That's the purpose of recording this session, such that people who are for one reason or the other unable to join will catch up with us. Thank you very much, everyone. It's been Rainy Day Cooperative Society, and we look forward to having you next week again.
All right. Enjoy your holidays. Thank you.